Hello everyone and welcome to the National Gallery on the occasion of the 4th National Indigenous Art Triennial ceremony. We are of course on the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, this beautiful country, and it is a real privilege for myself and for my fellow curatorial team, Kelly Cole, Aidan Hartshorn and Peter Johnson, to have worked on this exhibition in this country, and I know I speak for all of the artists in the exhibition in thanking the traditional owners of this place of ceremony and this place of culture for welcoming us into their country. And of course we're so delighted to have Dr. Matilda House and Paul Gilroy House as among this stellar group of artists exhibiting in ceremony. I have some, and I'd also like to say to hello everyone that's watching, not only here of course, but also from the comfort of their lounge chairs, those at home. It's a real pleasure. So, as I'm going to ask the artists to introduce themselves shortly, and as I will do now, to also describe themselves so that we are accessible for all audiences. So my name is Hetti Perkins. I'm an Arrernte and Kalkadoon woman. I am just over 55 and I'm wearing glasses. I've got grey hair, getting greyer by the minute, and I'm wearing all black. And I look slightly nervous, but I'm actually very happy to be here and in this company. I should also let you know that here in the theatre, if we could make sure that your phones and devices are turned to silent, and using the gallery's free Wi-Fi, you could go to slido.com. Enter the event code, which you'll see on the screen, but I'll also read out 368782, and that's the way that you can convey your questions to us, which I'll answer. I won't answer them. I'll ask them of our panel members. But if, yes, and so, yes, the Slido link is on the event webpage and also in the Facebook chat for those of you that are joining us by live stream. Okay, yeah. The nervous bit, it was true when I was self-describing. Now I'm going to go to ask Darrell. If you would introduce yourself, and don't forget, please, to self-describe.
Yeah, okay. I'm Darrell Sibosado. I'm a bard and Noongar man from the Dampier Peninsula in the West Kimberley. I'm 56. I've got grey hair, bit of a mo and a goatee, and I'm black fella.
S.J.
Yeah, I'm S.J Norman, New South Wales Koori, Wiradjuri heritage, born on Gadigal country. I am pushing 40 and longish black hair, some handsome silver streaks inside there, fair skin, bare hairy legs, 14-hole Doc Martens and a black shirt, and I'm a non-binary transmasculine person, pronouns are he, him.
Thank you. And Joel Bray.
Hi, my name's Joel Bray. I'm a Wiradjuri man, Duran clan from the Rileys up around Dubbo. I have blonde hair. I didn't get the memo about all black, so I've broken it up by wearing a white singlet with some baggy grey pants and some black shoes. Yeah.
And you're all gorgeous.
How are you, Hetti?
Thank you. So I might just start by asking you all about your work. Just if you could, describe the work that you've made for ceremony and, what it was about the idea of ceremony that compelled you to make the work. And if you could give a little bit of a description for all of our audiences, that'd be fabulous. Who wants to go first? Oh, S.J. apparently.
I'll get it done. No, does that know who it was? Do you want to go first?
No, Darrell just looked at you.
Oh. Throwing me under the bus. All right, so I just have to apologise in advance if I'm super rambly if I fall off my chair. It's just because I've had a really, really long day performing, and I've come straight out of that room and into this panel, so I am busted tired. So I'm sorry in advance if I'm slurring my words. I'm doing a work called Bone Library. Bone Library is a few things. Bone Library is an installation work. It is a generative sculptural installation work. It is a long durational performance, working with languages. Specifically, in this case, we're working with Woggaloo language, which is my collaborator for this iteration of Bone Library is Aidan Hartshorn, who is Woggaloo Man. Yeah, there he is. So Aidan and I are working together with colonial records taken mostly from, is that a primary source, secondary source? I never know. That's a primary source. Primary source is the first person that comes from. Secondary,
We'll
told
ask-
you I was tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So primary source material from, colonial linguistic records. So we're working with word lists, Woggaloo word lists, and inscribing individual words from those word lists onto the bones of sheep and beef cattle, some of which have been reclaimed from country up around where Aidan's from, in Tumut, and some of which have been prepared from fresh, and cataloguing them in these beautiful purpose-built vitrines that reference colonial museological collecting practices. What was the rest of the question?
I think that was
Is
it.
that enough? Okay, yeah,
That'll do
that's
for
it.
now.
That's what I'm doing. Your turn.
Go on.
Darrell.
Yeah, my work is called Ngarigij Mod. It means the right path to take, and in reference to ceremony, it's about my work. I've done a three-piece work, like a triptych. It's on lead neon, so they're about 2.5 meters high, 3 separate pieces, and they represent different aspects of the ceremony, but the whole work actually is talking about ceremony as a whole, as in your life. So the three pieces represent the location that you're at, the path or the activity that you're doing throughout your life, and who you are, how you fit in that, in the whole sort of ceremony of life, I guess. Yeah. And they're all lit up. So, but I work in sort of large scale all the time. I started mainly with metal, Corten steel and mill steel. And I work with our traditional Rigi designs. So they're the designs we etch onto the mother of pearl ceremonial plates that the men wear. And the designs have been passed down. They're passed down through your family. So there's a whole series of different motifs and symbols that are passed down to me and my brothers. And I'm doing them in big metal sort of sculptural pieces. And whatever else I move on to, I'm just open to whatever's out there. So I'm trying to sort of use the materials we live with all day, just, making a comment about our culture being alive, and it's right here, right now, and we'll use what we've got at hand.
Yeah, well said. And Joel.
The work I've made is called Giraro Galingana Giri, which is Wiradjuri for The Wind Will Bring the Rain. It's a 7-screen multi-channel video work, shot all up on Wiradjuri country, around Wagga Wagga and the Riverina. And most of the footage has me kind of dancing, inhabiting each of the different locations we shot on. And the work is a kind of like meditation, I guess, on country and the ancientness of country and the enduring cycles of nature, like storms, like wind and rain. Or, when I was down there, it was shortly after the Murrumbidgee had flooded. So there's kind of these ancient cycles of water, I guess. So it's a meditation on that and finding succor, finding solace in zooming out enough, I guess, to if you look at things from country's perspective, actually, she's going to survive. She'll survive anything we do to her. So yeah, I find solace in that.
And you employed an interesting technology, didn't you, with imaging yourself?
Yeah, so So we basically used green screen. It's green screen technology. It's called chroma key. So basically, like in post, you can key out any color. And so we painted me in pink paint. Pink being a color that didn't often occur in the landscape. And then we shot other footage. I'm going to say we. I worked with filmmaker James Wright, who I've collaborated with on a bunch of earlier works. But this was by far the biggest work we've done together. And so James, we painted me up, and then James in post kind of chroma keyed out that pink and replaced it with other footage that we shot of various locations, like textures like water and the wind in the trees and things like that. And so it's a nod to ceremony. It's a nod to the way we've always painted up for ceremony, but it's like I'm painted with country. Like the terrain is painted onto my body, as a kind of another kind of idea thing that evokes for me is the way like blackfellas who don't live on their own country, the kind of who have this diasporic experience, how we carry the memory of country with us. You know, every time I go back and I hear the particular combination of crows and cockatoos that is like, you know, a smell of the drooping wattle, or like the things that I go, oh yeah, my body remembers this place and aches for this place. So I guess, yeah, just talking about that.
And that was, sorry, I will get back to you, but that was the title. That's what the title refers to, doesn't it? That physical experience of country when you were away from country.
Yeah. So when I was like in lockdown, especially because we couldn't get up across, because I live in Melbourne, in Naarm, and I couldn't get across the border to visit home. So one of the things I would do if I saw on the weather map that a storm was coming down from Wiradjuri country, I'd go and stand in the storm and let the water kind of wash over me, and kind of that was one way I could connect, with my country, was through the water of it. So that's why the work's called The Wind Will Bring the Rain.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. S.J, thinking about your work, and I know you're performing and you're tired and you're probably inhaled bone dust, but you'll have a fabulous voice like Darrell's before too long. But the process or the performance of this work, it started a long time ago, didn't it? Was it 2007?
Yeah, I think the very first version of Bone Library was on Wiradjuri country, and it was at the City of Melbourne Library, and we worked with Waiwarang was the language of Wiradjuri people, and that was back in it was 2010. It was 2010, long time. Been doing this, so it's a funny one because obviously, I work with extended duration, and there's a few ways that we can define that terrain, right? And you and I have had big yarns before about ceremonial time, small c ceremonial time, and the idea of kind of ceremonial temporality, and how it's not it's never based in spectacle, it's based in process, and so it's always this kind of question where the kind of the temporality that I'm aiming to engage in this work is long time, like long durational, so it's like, I told you I was going to give really circuitous responses. I'm sorry, I'm so tired. I guess what I'm trying to get to is that people want to know when the thing's going to start.
Yeah.
People want to know when the thing's going to start. They're like, when's your show? It's like, well, it's not really a show. It's just me it's me and Aidan doing some stuff in a room that is a window into a continuing process that began a long time ago. And this is just the part that is forward facing, and that audiences get to witness this final stage. But the collecting of the bones, that's part of the performance. The bringing them here, preparing them, that's part of the performance. There's all, just because it's not being witnessed by a general audience doesn't sort of demarcate. That's not the point where the beginning of the performance is demarcated, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Do you feel, does something shift for you as the performer, as the artist, when someone walks? Because I presume there's times in there where there's no artist, no audience, no one watching. Does it shift for you, or do you feel like you're just kind of, you're cruising energetically, and then the audience is like just there or not there?
It's pretty dynamic. Yeah, it's pretty dynamic. It's I have my baseline that I kind of cruise on, you know, but you know, this is a work which unfolds over the course of 5 to 6 days usually, and ordinarily I'll do 5 to 6 hours of engraving straight through. And this is the first time I've also done this work with a collaborator. It's always just been me in that room, and that's really different, you know. I've noticed that because Aidan and I have our own rapport and we have our own thing going on, we're also working with the raw, like the quote-unquote raw material of that language, or the transliterations of that language that have been put down by colonial linguists. So we're speaking the words aloud and then re-inscribing and working with the language itself. So there's a lot going on between us. Whereas ordinarily, so we've got our own dynamic, and then there's the audience that comes in, but then we have our individual things that we're doing. So it's kind of, it shifts a lot. Sometimes, I'm just winding it back to your original question, which was how much does the audience affect what I'm doing? The audience can affect what I'm doing quite radically if they get in my face. And some people can, you know, because, you know, I am actually sort of like handling power tools and handling, you know, like handling, if someone distracts me, I can hurt myself, or I can hurt an audience member, or if someone gets too close, like a piece of bone fragment can fly off and hit someone in the eye. So there's a lot of kind of actual, like very concrete things that I have to be thinking about. And there's a lot of mechanisms actually that have to be sort of held and kept flowing. So if someone decides to kind of get into that space, it can throw my energy off, but it can also throw the process off. But at the same time, it's very fluid. Like sometimes I'm open to have a yarn with some people if I feel like they're engaged. If kids talk to me, I'll always talk to kids. You know, if mob talk to me, I'll always talk to mob. You know, you gauge whether people are kind of trying to get something from you, or whether they are actually wanting to actually have a yarn, you know. And then there are moments, you know, many hours where I'm in there completely alone, and I'm just in there with the language, and that's when it gets real spooky. Yeah, that's when you start hearing things, and that's when it really shifts, and that's I'm getting a little chill up the back of my neck, because I'm not going to go too far down that path, but yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah.
Can I just ask you, Joel, about performing? You performed it today, and you will also tomorrow. How is that in terms of your audience engagement in that process? How does that work for you? And the engagement with other works of art?
Yeah. So the nature of my work is participatory, and I make work that's participatory based on the observation that do this in a different sequence. I consider the performance work I do to be an extension of the thousands of years of history of Wiradjuri ceremony. And one of the observations I have about ceremony is that there's no such thing as an audience in the European sense of the word, like a group of people who passively sit there and consume what you're presenting. In fact, that's an innovation for the roots of European theatre are ritual. You know, you look at ancient Greek theatre, whatever. So I actually feel like it's more like returning to the original, actually. Even witnessing is a form of participation. And what's beautiful about that is that everyone has to be there. Like your presence, no matter how big or small your role is, your presence is essential for this thing to happen. And that's beautiful and empowering and creates connection and creates community. So in my work, I'm always trying to find ways of like curling people into the experience, and not kind of like whipping or forcing or like, you know, castigating, but like, yeah, kind of like curling people in, inviting people in to like interact and to kind of, yeah, create connection. So, so for this performance here, Yeah, it was interesting. I kind of didn't really. I had some rough ideas, and then I came a few days ago, and I was so blessed to be able to I just was like hanging out in the exhibition for a couple of days, and then I was like, I hadn't had an opportunity to chat with the artists. And so I was like, I don't think I want to make something. I don't want to perform something that's about the works. Don't want to do that. I don't want to accidentally, step wrong or something. So then I was like, actually, what if it was about the audience? What if I turned it from it being about the art on the wall to the audience? And so, yeah, I kind of, it was like the starting point for me was like actually about audienceship and about how we navigate spaces and how we look at art and how we consume it and how we interact with the other bodies around us. And yeah, so that's kind of, and then the works became the kind of like the set for this kind of action to happen. Yeah, and then also I love how the actual exhibition is a circle, which is like beautiful in ceremony. Like we use circles, so I thought, okay, well I'll kind of go with that decision that you had obviously made and make a circle out of it, and then finish in a circle. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Darrell, this obviously touches on this idea of who does what and audiences and roles in ceremony, but I wanted to, before I sort of ask you about that, you, when you first came to Sydney, you were a member of NASDA, the dance company, and some very celebrated dancers and yourself. We won't ask you to do us. Yes, and also then you had a wonderful, a close relationship with artist who's passed away, Michael Riley, and worked with him on the Sacrifice series. How do you see that experience flowing into your work now?
Okay, so when I first came to NASDA, that was like 1985 or something. And there were a lot of the dancers that came out of there, and now they were with Bangar, and they established Bangar. Russell Page and Stephen and all of them were there. But at that same time, when sort of NASDA was just kicking off with all these sort of brilliant people who became amazing dancers anyway, half of them had never danced before. They started dancing when they were like 16, 17, 18, when we got to NASDA, really. But at that same time, there was a lot of activity happening in Sydney. There's a whole big sort of movement of young Aboriginal people in the arts and in politics. So Bumali was happening then, Koi Radio was getting off, Tranby was down the road. So this is how you mentioned Michael Riley. We were all sort of, to me, part of, like, when I was talking about with my work, trying to touch on that whole thing as life as a ceremony, we were all part of that and adding our bit, and we were feeding off each other anyway, so we were, I know I did anyway. I learned so much by all the other people, I sort of went all the Brenda Crofts and Michael Rileys and, and then we all met and stuff, but that was all going back into my own work as well, while I was still as a student at NASDA. And then I just moved into, visual arts and more sort of management and producing stuff. But it was with all those different people doing their little pieces, their bit, And we all crossed paths all the time. We were all traveling that same path, Yeah, met amazing people and lost some really beautiful people.
Yeah, we did. Let me take it back to you, Joel. You were talking about consultation, obviously, with your work and the locations you filmed. Can you tell us a little bit about those? And I can see there are questions coming up, and I will get to them. But yeah, working on Wiradjuri country and what that process was, please.
Yeah, so the filming was, we filmed around Wagga Wagga and the Riverina, and it's been this really beautiful process. That's not actually where my family's from, we're more north. But I was it was Ian Artie-Collis, who works here at the gallery, introduced me to some of the aunties and uncles there. And over the last year, I've been, building a really beautiful relationship with that community. And they were just super generous. And the elders allocated Uncle James Ingram to kind of be our escort. And we had this like consultation process before we even went up, where we were talking about, and the aunties and uncles got real good at Zoom. was amazing, and so like, you know, like specific sites that were chosen. You know, the Arnie's gifted me the use of not actually the women's site, but kind of above it. And you know, if you look at the work, there's like scar trees and there's boundary trees, like where like they were making like diamond shapes and stuff. You can see them in the background. That was really like an important part of the work. So yeah, like one of the best things to come out of this project is actually those relationships.
Yeah, it's certainly true. And we at the gallery, of course, are very grateful for that support. One of the things that we've done with the artworks in this exhibition is added a cultural credit to works that have been commissioned to acknowledge, you know, people, for instance, that have supported the artist to make their work. So I think that's a really, you know, appropriate thing to do. Now I want to sort of do a bit of show and tell, or I'll do the showing, you do the telling, about your beautiful book. Speaking of words and writing, as many of you will know, I'll do my best hand modelling.
My publisher's going to love you.
Hey?
My publisher's going to love you.
Oh, I just want you to love
books.
me. I just want you to love me.
Oh my goodness.
You with your auto-fictional resonances, dark wit and swagger.
I don't know why they wrote auto-fictional. It's not auto-fictional at all. I mean, there is one essay in there, actually. That's actually, there is one non-fiction piece in there.
Is there?
I'm not going to tell
Okay.
you which one it is, though.
Well, this book is a series of beautiful short stories, which I haven't read because I'm way too windy to read scary stories. But how does this relate to your practice? So the audience coming to ceremony is seeing your performance work, and you're also an author. Please explain.
You know what? I hate answering this question.
I know, but
yeah, I know.
I'll ask you those ones in a minute.
Push my buttons. Look, it kind of it does and it doesn't. You know, on the one hand, it does because it's all my practice. You know, but my work as an author feels to me to be quite separate, in fact, from my performance and my visual arts practice. They're entwined, but they're different. They're different processes. For me, they're different headspaces. They come into them at a different frequency, and so in many ways, there's a bleed between them, and of course they talk to each other. You know, they're all coming through my body and my lens on things, and you know, I'm the cipher for all of them, but they're different. They're different, you know, and you can definitely trace thematics and threads, and you can see things, repeated themes, or you know, loops or motifs like turn up in different pieces of work across genres. But I'm pretty promiscuous in terms of my methodologies and my interests and the forms that I engage in my work, and writing is just another thing that I do. Same as I make jewelry, and I make, I'm carving some bones today, and I've also trained in performance and different aspects of performance, and I've worked with sound, I've worked with video, it's like I kind of do a lot of different things, which is pretty, not uncommon for blackfellas, so we don't have the same. It's just generally been my observation of my peers is that we don't have a lot of the time the same kind of really understanding of these kind of very discrete categories between disciplines. Like we tend to be quite wildly interdisciplinary, and so I guess that's an answer.
Yeah, that's a very good answer, and good opportunity to look at the book.
Yeah. With Jenna Lee's beautiful cover.
Yes, stunning cover.
Yeah. Another. She's Wiradjuri too, I reckon. I think. Is Jenna here? You here? No, she was here last night. Yesterday. Yeah. Beautiful cover. Also did Jazz Money's cover, and
Yes. Oh, Jazz Money's, yes. How to Weave a Basket. All available in the art store.
All available in the bookstore. $29.90. How much is it anyway?
Good bookshops everywhere, especially the one here.
RPP. It's not telling me. It's like $20 or something. Bargain.
Bargain basement. Speaking of being moving around and working in different ways, which of course is something that ceremony is also about, is that it brings together many different art forms, ways of being, ways of speaking, ways of participating. Joel, when I invited you to be part of ceremony, I was a bit surprised when you said you'd do a film work. Can you tell us?
Yeah, I thought so. I thought, yeah, you were like nudging me one way, and I was like,
Stay in your lane, Joel Bray.
Yeah, I mean this work took a big meander. I think it was a COVID thing, like, because when you spoke with me, like not initially, but when we restarted the conversation, I had started to pivot, like, and I was like making, work on my iPhone in my kitchen, like all my peers were at
Weren't
the
we
time.
all, babe?
Sorry,
Weren't we all?
Well, exactly.
Glory days of the online pivot. Sorry.
Yeah, and then I was like, yeah, I was interested in the screen. I was interested in, like, I was kind of like nutting it out and trying to, like, figure out how I might redeploy, like, my methodology for live performance to the screen. And so then when you came along, you were like, oh, would you ever do something for a gallery? I think that's that's kind of where I was at. So that was what got interested. And I thought it was going to be a once-off. I thought it was like, yeah, this will be a COVID thing, and then I'll go back. But I've really enjoyed it. I'm surprised how much I've enjoyed making work for screen, and I'm going to do more of it.
And how involved were you in the soundscape that accompanies the images that we see?
So Dan Nixon's the composer, and we've worked before, and like I can be really light touch with him. So he came with us and did field recordings of stuff. Plus we did some like studio recordings. I wanted some different textures and stuff, and I just kind of sketched out what I wanted, and then he made something, and then I was like, nope. And then I told him what I really wanted, and then he made that. Yeah, he always made what I asked for, but like sometimes what I asked for was crap. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought it'd be a good time to now point out that we've got, of course, a beautiful digital catalogue where the artists share their stories with us, and also that M. Fishpool, wonderful artist who has made the soundscape to accompany the videos and films of all of the artists. So just wanted to do a special shout out to M. Fishpool and their wonderful work for this project. We're really grateful to them, and also Jazz Money, who has curated a sort of a playlist. That's what it's called. A playlist for ceremony. So it's been a great opportunity for us to also work with people in different ways throughout this exhibition, as sort of more of a not sort of just keeping you to things on walls, and of course that's been part of moving works outside of the building, beautiful tree scouring, Nicole Forshu's beautiful Healing Mist, and of course Robert Fielding's Car on the Lake. Darrell, there's a question for you here, which says, your work looks like meditative symbols. How do they relate to the individual? And I think it's a good question, isn't it? Because the way you drew these was a particular way.
Yeah. So as I said before, like these symbols are passed down through your father's line, so it goes through the men's line. So now they're all the symbols that are sort of they're not owned, but they are part of my brothers. We all can do them, and we do different sort of versions of them. There's slight differences. We stick to the main sort of form of it, but then the individual artist or brother you'll notice it with some of my brother's work is downstairs in the shop. So he's done the regees, the actual, and carving them into the pearl shell. And there's some on there that, I don't know if people are familiar with the work I've done before, but some of those, he's done some of them. But when you look at them, there's slight differences to mine. So further on down the track, I guess, this is where the person fits into these designs. It's like as we go further down with our sons and grandsons and blah, 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 sooner or later they'll be like, if you see one of the grandsons work, you'll know whose grandchild they are because it's going down that line. So it takes that, not your family line, I guess, but it's all your brothers anyway, but it's that particular father or whichever brother you are. And with the work for ceremony, that was, the third one is Jimorgamol, which is a warrior symbol, but I just use that as a sort of metaphor for a person, your position within the community and within that environment. Yeah, and so that's where it's very personal, this whole ceremonial thing, and the work I did. It's about your position within the community, within your group, your status, whether you're initiated or not, and where you're located, so yeah, and which path you're on, how far you are on that journey.
And on some occasions being choreographed, directed on that journey too.
Yeah, you'll see in the middle one, which is more, that's the path. There's the semicircles and the dashes. They're elders. So there's an elder woman and an elder man that will always be following you. They're usually, for us, it's your aunt and your uncle, not your mum and dad. And they're the ones that take you through all those steps, and keep you on the right path. They're the ones that discipline you and teach you everything. Your parents just stay out of it.
And the other thing that we talked about was the 3 lines, wasn't it? It was the symmetry and the use of 3 lines. That's a very important part of the design. Yeah,
so with the Bard people, Wiradjuri people up on the peninsula, so that's those 3 symbols. They're evident in our body paint, but also in the scarification across your chest for both men and women. It's like there's 3 sort of main stages, and then you get more, But you've got to get those 3 first, and that's what we have in those things. You'll see it in every now and then we do sort of maybe a single line, but most of the time there's always 3 lines, yeah.
And that favouring, the symmetrical thing is really quite distinctive, isn't it, too?
Yeah.
It's interesting that, as you say, with the scarification, because of course it's something that is with an old lady who passed away, Burjungali's work in the exhibition, that Chimera is also that, scarification.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we might ask him some more questions. So for all of the artists, can you talk a little bit about the power of performance and why performance and not another form? Who wants to go? Why performance? Joel. You could also, because I know that you were very inspired by kind of happening upon a flock of birds. Yerevan.
Yeah. So, there's a kind of creation story to how I became a dancer, like a kind of personal mythology. It's one of those stories that I've told so many times. Like, I think it's mostly true. So I was at uni studying a degree, not particularly engaged. I was a nerdy bookworm of a kid. I didn't do any sport. I didn't do any anything artistic. Didn't do anything musical. But I did discover dancing, and I on the dance floor, as in So, and it was kind of wrapped up in coming out. And then I was at a queer students conference in Bathurst, which happened to be Wiradjuri country, and we'd partied all night, and then everyone fell asleep, and I was left standing in this student common room with all these student activist types kind of sleeping on the floor. And so I decided to go outside, and I came to the bottom of a hill, and on top of the hill was a tree without any leaves, and swooping through the tree and amongst each other was a flock of small birds, and I don't know exactly what they were, but in hindsight, I think they were a yiraban, which is the welcome swallow, and which, as a pun, I love as well. So I watched them for a while, and I I watched, and there wasn't any kind of like reason for what they were doing. They weren't like feeding or breeding or kind of like doing any of the kind of Darwinian evolutionary things that you expected from animals. They were just like dancing, basically. And I was like, I'm going to do that. That was the moment I got inspired on Wiradjuri country by these beautiful, beautiful birds. And still, like, hands down, guaranteed, they're common. They're everywhere over this continent. Hands down, the first bird I see whenever I arrive in a new place is the welcome swallow, like within minutes, normally on the tarmac. Yeah, they always come and greet me. And in some ways, my choreographic practice is the impossible mission to recreate the flight of birds. I keep on making works that try to recreate the flight of birds and fail because I'm not a bird.
I just realised that, there's probably, because you mentioned Naysda and Bangarra before, I realised that everybody here either is a dancer or comes from a dance or choreographic background. So that's just an interesting kind of thread that was unaware of before, that wasn't fully in my mind before. It's like the work that I do is almost always, with the exception of this context and a few other exceptions, I'm almost always working in dance festivals in a dance context, and working within kind of choreography rather than visual arts, because my work is about bodies moving through space, both my body and audience bodies in relationship to objects. And we're talking about, talking through your work, Darrell, before, and talking about, the specific kind of choreography of ceremony. I don't know, I was going to say something else, but I was just picking up on that. I was cycling back to the original question, which was why performance, and just sort of thought about it, just picked up on that thread between all three of us. And why performance? I don't know, why not? Like, kind of why not, but again, I feel like there's a... Again, I come back to this question of like multidisciplinarity, that I feel is really consistently represented by so many Aboriginal artists, like from all over this continent, and it's like whether you're carving or dancing or fishing or singing, it's just they're all aspects of ceremonial practice. They're all ceremonial technologies potentially, and they're all like, it's all story. Right, like it's all a way for story to come, like, and it's so why performance? Why not? Like, why carving? Why neon sculpture? Like, why anything? Like,
White fellas be like, hey, we've discovered this amazing new thing. It's called interdisciplinary, site-specific, durational work.
Whoa.
I'm like, bitch, we've been doing that for 60,000 years.
Yeah, I think that all the time. I truly do think that all the time, and I was going to say something else, but I'll shut up now. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just finding different ways to say things, I guess. It's the different languages you can use. Whether it's the visual, the physical, or
And for me, I feel like it's like whatever's, a work is going to show up, or something's going to show up in me, in my body, that wants to get out and wants to there's a story coming, or there's something something pressing on the underside of my skin that needs to come into the world, and I'll only know when I start engaging with it how it's going to come into the world. Whatever needed to come through that book came through that book. Whatever needed to come through this work came through that work. I won't know until it's happening. Yeah.
And what is the relationship with the audience with Bone Library in this iteration? Previously the bones have been, well, you can talk about what's previously happened.
So in previous iterations of Bone Library, there's been a sort of a ceremony, small C ceremony, at the end where the bones have been dispersed. So with the permission of the custodians of that language and through a particular process, The audiences who have like come and engaged with that work over the course of its presentation and over the course of the process are come and they are given a bone which they take into their trusteeship. So there is a floating, a floating collection of bones from this work that are held in the hands of individual audience members. The way that is done is, I don't want to sort of step through it because it's a little bit complex, and I don't want to eat up too much time. But one of the crucial things that happens in that dispersal action is the index cards are taken away before the audience come, because people who come and sit with the work over the course of the week or so that it's being performed, people will be like, they pick out their favourites, they'll see the word that means mother, or they'll see the word that means sister, or they'll pick out their bone that they want, and they get to the thing and they think they're going to get the bone that they want, and you're not going to get the bone you want, you're going to get the bone you're given. And we take the index cards away, or take the index cards away so that the English translation is no longer there. Or the audiences are allowed to select the bone that calls to them, but you don't have the English translation. So there's a lot of my work is about really subtle power flips. There's take this fruit as my body, same deal. There's kind of like you think something's happening, and then there's a little, and a lot of that is to do with like sort of like this addressing this colonial need to possess and to own and to know and to acquire, and this is a work specifically about the acquisition of knowledge, or the preservation of knowledge, or the and about the ontological clash between different knowledge systems, and the discomfort of not knowing things, and so that action of taking the index cards away and then getting audiences to make a selection or to choose the bone that they're going to take home with them when they don't have access to what that word means, and they have to then go and do the digging and find the word list and look it up and find out what it means. That then means that they have to engage in a process. They have to do some work, and that's an invitation to audience to become active participants in the process, and the idea of the dispersal and the temporary trusteeship, and it is temporary trusteeship, and those bones are given to audience members. That's a profound act of trust. The expectation is that those bones will be recalled, and that when they are recalled, you give them back. So I have everyone's names and addresses. If there's anyone who's got a bone, I know where you live. May come for it yet. So the idea again is that that you are not that you don't own this object. You don't get to fetishize this object. You don't own this object. You have a responsibility to take care of this object, and it's not about you. So that's challenging for a lot of white audiences. People get upset when they come in the room and they don't know how to find their favourite bone. They get legit upset. Yeah, right. So that's just a little. An interesting thing, but that's also kind of about the idea of decentralising knowledge, and it's an anti-institutional gesture. It's an institutional critique. The colonial project is very invested in holding knowledge in monoliths, like this, and so that's not how our knowledge systems work. So it's just something that gestures again towards a tension between. Between ontologies and the way that you even work with that material or understand that material. Whether or not we're going to do that this time around is uncertain. That's something that Aidan and I are working on. Where we'll make a decision together about what's going to happen to the Walgaloo bones, because we may or may not do that action. So we'll decide. We'll know when we get to the end of the process what we're going to do this time.
Here's another question for everyone. Bodies are political. How do you feel about performance as a way of resisting or reclaiming power? Who's going to jump into that? How does it feel? Let me suggest with you, Darrell, because your work is, you're up home now, living on country. How do you, what does that mean to you? I mean, in terms of power and resistance?
I don't know if there's so much, resistance, I guess. The really obvious thing for me when I moved home was the falling away of things, even my language was coming back. I knew the words were all in here, but when I was like living in the city or whatever, I didn't really have the opportunity to use the words, like a lot of it is associated with place, and the location, and when I moved home, that's why now, I only started doing really focusing on my own practice when I moved home, in visual arts anyway. And it sort of took me to go home for all of that stuff to just fall away, all that Western learnt stuff, which had its place and its time, So I don't know, I guess that's where the power was it was always there, but it was just covered, It's like we cover our country in bitumen and cement and everything. The country's still there, you can get rid of the bitumen and stuff, whenever you want, really. But I guess that's is that what you're sort of asking, or?
Not sure what I'm asking, but I do
I know what I'm saying, actually.
Yeah. I guess thinking about, your body, remembering being on country and remembering, but and how that sort of affected, experienced in your work.
Okay, yeah. So for me, it was really quite a physical response anyway, in relation to my practice, because I'm there and I'm back in the rhythm that is my country, my rhythm. We're saltwater people. And that really affects me when I'm specifically back home on country at that beach, Bangad is the place. That's Gulgan is the fish trap work. That's that fish trap at that beach. That's the location bit of it. But for me, it was a real physical response. The rhythm was back, and things were just chipping away and then falling off because I've gotten back to that rhythm that is me and my people.
Yeah, beautiful. Joel, S.J, any comment on that? I think bodies are...
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The bodies are political. I think, say, with activism, we can do as many change.org petitions online as we like, but in the end, the thing that makes a difference is when we get our bodies together and we chain ourselves to trees, or we block traffic, or in the end, you have to bring your body into it, And I think that's something that queer folk know, because our bodies have been in danger so often, but then there's also power in taking to the streets, blocking. We do actions with our body, and that's the act. In the end, that's the only thing that's ever going to change. And then because I came to dance around the time of the anti-globalization protests around the turn of the century. It was, the World Economic Forum in Seattle and all that. And there was this moment where it was kind of where we felt like we were going to make a massive change and we were going to really challenge capitalism. And then 9/11 happened, and the world got real conservative really quickly. And I remember in that moment going, do I keep bringing my body onto the street? Do I keep chaining myself to trees? Do I keep doing that? No, this doesn't feel like the right time. So I was like, it was also around the time of the Sydney Olympics protests. I was involved with the 10 embassy that was in Victoria Park, and we were kind of but didn't kind of take off. Yeah, and so one of my decisions to become an artist, and I think a dancer in particular, was during these historical moments where when things are conservative, it's the artists who keep the flame of revolution alive, and that, you know, because we can only make a new future that we can imagine, and it's the artists who imagine that future. And so that was the moment why around 2001 I made that decision to become an artist.
We are running out of time. Did you want to talk to the bodies are political in less than 4 minutes?
No, I don't want that job. Yeah, what was the question? It was
It's
like bodies
an excellent
are political.
question, but it probably deserves longer.
Yeah, that's
to
the whole
answer it.
PhD thesis, that question.
Yeah.
That's my whole practice, that question.
That-
It's literally my whole practice, and slash my life, you know. My, you know, that's my whole shtick. So I would need a little more granularity on that one. Yeah.
We've only got 3 minutes.
Yeah, we've got, yeah.
I think we might have to, by saying how big and important that question is, that there's just possibly not the time to answer it properly. We might close this session, and just to say that before I let you all go, we've got a yarning circle happening with Robert Fielding down by the lake, which of course will be a wonderful time to sit back and relax and then talk to Robert. He's a wonderful storyteller. At 2 p.m. tomorrow, Joel Bray will be dancing in the space. We all meet in the TEG foyer. And then 11 to 1 and 2 to 3.
Back at it.
We can see SJ and Aidan in action, but not talk to them, of
You
course.
can talk. I didn't mean to sound harsh before. I was just, yeah.
Probably good as a general.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
once
not-
one
not when I'm
person talks, everyone then
concentrating.
needs to have a talk, I think, is the problem. And what else do I need to say to you all? Oh, yes, and tomorrow morning at 10:30, we'll all be back here where I'm talking with Dr. Matilda House, Paul Gura House, Robert Andrew and Nicole Forshoe. So we'd love to see you back here again tomorrow. And in the meantime, all I've got to do now is to say, hang on, green highlight question for Hetti. How do we access the digital catalogue? Not sure. Presume it's on the National Gallery's website. Where's Pete Johnson when you need him? Oh, there's Jen's nodding. Yes. Just go to the NJ website. You'll find it there. So it is Thanks Hetti on the website. Okay. All right, please join me in thanking S.J Norman, Darrell Sibosado and Joel Bray, and bye everyone at home.
Thanks, Hetti.
Thank you all.